The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Windsor Castle as Prince William walked slowly through the ancient gardens. His usually confident stride had been replaced by something more hesitant, more fragile. The weight of the news he had received just hours earlier pressed heavily on his shoulders like an invisible burden. Catherine noticed the change immediately when she found him sitting on the stone bench near the rose garden, staring at nothing in particular. His hands trembled slightly as he held the medical report that would change everything they had planned for their family's future. "William?" she called softly, approaching him with careful steps. The morning air was crisp, and she could see her breath forming small clouds as she spoke. "The children are asking for you. They want to show you their drawings from yesterday's art lesson." He looked up at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. There was a vulnerability there that she rarely witnessed, even in their most private moments together. William had always been the strong one, the pillar that held their family together through every royal duty and public scrutiny. "Sit with me," he said, patting the cold stone beside him. "We need to talk." Catherine felt her stomach tighten as she settled next to her husband. In their years together, she had learned to read the subtle changes in his voice, the way his jaw tensed when he was trying to control his emotions. This was different from anything she had experienced before. William handed her the papers with shaking hands. As Catherine read through the medical terminology and test results, her face grew pale. The words seemed to blur together as the reality of their situation began to sink in. This wasn't just about William anymore. This would affect their entire family, their children, and their future as working royals. "How long have you known?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle rustling of leaves in the morning breeze. "The doctors called this morning. They wanted to discuss the results in person, but I insisted they tell me over the phone. I couldn't wait any longer." William's voice cracked slightly as he continued. "Catherine, I'm scared, not just for myself, but for what this means for George, Charlotte, and Louis. How do we explain this to them?" The couple sat in silence for several minutes, both lost in their own thoughts about how their lives were about to change dramatically. The peaceful morning around them seemed almost mocking in its serenity, as if the world hadn't just shifted beneath their feet. Inside the castle, King Charles was in his private study when his secretary knocked on the door with an urgent message. The king had been reviewing his schedule for the upcoming state visits when the call came through from William's private secretary. The tone in the young man's voice immediately told Charles that something was seriously wrong. "Your Majesty, the Prince of Wales requests an urgent meeting with you. He said it concerns a family matter of the utmost importance." Charles felt his heart begin to race. In recent months, he had noticed subtle changes in William's behavior during their regular meetings. His eldest son had seemed more tired than usual, sometimes struggling to concentrate during lengthy discussions about royal duties and constitutional matters. At the time, Charles had attributed it to the increasing pressures of royal life and the demands of raising 3 young children. "Have him come to my study immediately," Charles instructed. "And please ensure we are not disturbed for the next hour." 20 minutes later, William entered his father's study, looking as though he had aged years in just a few hours. His usually impeccable appearance was disheveled, his tie loosened and his hair uncombed. Charles immediately stood and embraced his son, feeling the tension in William's shoulders as he held him. "Father, I need to tell you something that will affect the entire family," William began, his voice steady despite the emotional turmoil he was experiencing. "The doctors have confirmed what we suspected during my recent health checks." Charles listened in stunned silence as William explained the medical diagnosis that would require immediate treatment and potentially limit his ability to fulfill his royal duties in the coming months. The implications were staggering, not just for William's health, but for the carefully planned succession of royal responsibilities that had been years in the making. "We need to consider how to handle this publicly," William continued. "The press will eventually find out, and I want to control the narrative rather than have speculation run wild in the tabloids. But more importantly, we need to prepare the family, especially the children." King Charles felt the weight of his own responsibilities multiplying as he considered the challenges ahead. As both a father and a monarch, he would need to support his son while also ensuring the stability of the institution they both served. The delicate balance between public duty and private family matters had never felt more precarious. Outside, Catherine was making her way back to the castle, having spent additional time in the garden processing the news. She knew that the conversations happening inside would determine not just their immediate future, but potentially reshape the royal family's public role for years to come. The morning that had started like any other had become the beginning of the most challenging period of their lives together. The emergency family meeting was called for that afternoon in the drawing room at Windsor Castle. Queen Camilla arrived first, her face etched with concern after receiving Charles's urgent phone call. She had immediately cancelled her scheduled engagements for the day, understanding that whatever was happening required the full attention of the senior royals. Princess Anne entered shortly after, her no-nonsense demeanor softened by obvious worry. She had driven directly from her countryside estate after receiving the cryptic message about a family emergency. The Princess Royal had always maintained a special relationship with William, admiring his dedication to duty and his natural leadership qualities. Prince Edward and Sophie arrived together, both looking anxious as they took their seats in the familiar room where so many family discussions had taken place over the years. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken fears as they waited for William and Catherine to join them. When William finally entered the room with Catherine by his side, the assembled family members could immediately see the strain on both their faces. Catherine's eyes were red from crying, while William carried himself with the forced composure that came from years of royal training in emotional control. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," William began, standing before his family. "What I'm about to share will come as a shock, but I wanted you to hear it from me directly before we make any public announcements." The silence in the room was deafening as William took a deep breath and began to explain his medical diagnosis. He spoke with clinical precision about the doctor's findings, the treatment options available, and the uncertain timeline for his recovery. Throughout his explanation, he maintained eye contact with each family member, determined to face their reactions head-on. Queen Camilla was the first to speak, her voice gentle but firm. "William, what do you need from us? How can we support you and Catherine through this?" The question opened the floodgates for a discussion about practical matters that would need immediate attention. Royal engagements would need to be reassigned. Public appearances would require careful scheduling around William's treatment. And most importantly, the children would need additional support and protection from media scrutiny. Princess Anne, ever the pragmatist, began making notes about which of William's charitable commitments could be temporarily transferred to other family members. Her military background had taught her the importance of strategic planning during crises, and she was already thinking several steps ahead about how to maintain public confidence in the monarchy during this challenging period. Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, the couple's 3 children were spending the afternoon with their nanny, completely unaware that their world was about to change significantly. George, at 11 years old, had begun to understand more about his family's unique position in the world, but Charlotte and Louis remained blissfully innocent about the weight of royal responsibility. Catherine had insisted that they wait until the family meeting was complete before sitting down with the children. She wanted to ensure that all the adults were prepared to answer any questions the children might have, and that there was a unified approach to explaining the situation in age-appropriate terms. Back in London, the royal communications team was already being briefed about the need for a carefully crafted public statement. The challenge would be providing enough information to prevent speculation, while protecting the family's privacy during what would undoubtedly be a difficult period. Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary, had been tasked with coordinating the response across all royal households. He understood better than most how quickly palace news could leak to the press, and the importance of controlling the narrative from the very beginning. "We need to be proactive rather than reactive," he explained to his team during an emergency meeting. The statement must convey the seriousness of the situation, while maintaining optimism about the prince's recovery. Most importantly, we need to request privacy for the family during this time. As evening approached, William and Catherine finally returned to Kensington Palace to face what they both knew would be the most difficult conversation of their parenting journey. The children had finished their dinner and were playing in the sitting room when their parents entered, both trying to appear more normal than they felt. "Can we have a family meeting?" William asked, settling into his favorite armchair as the children gathered around him. Catherine sat on the sofa nearby, ready to provide support as needed. George immediately sensed that something was different. His parents' body language was tense, and there was something in their voices that made him pay closer attention than usual. Charlotte and Louis, younger and more focused on their toys, took longer to realize that this wasn't just another ordinary family chat. "I need to tell you something important about my health," William began, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes adults get sick, just like children do. But sometimes it takes longer to get better. Charlotte looked up from her coloring book, suddenly interested in the conversation. Are you sick, Papa? Do you need medicine, like when Louis had his fever? The innocent question nearly broke William's composure. But he managed to smile gently at his daughter. Yes, sweetheart. I am sick. But the doctors are going to help me get better. It might take some time, and there might be some changes in our routine while I'm getting treatment. George, more perceptive than his siblings, asked the question that William had been dreading. Does this mean you can't do your royal duties anymore? Will someone else have to take over? Catherine reached over to take George's hand, understanding that their eldest child was beginning to grasp the broader implications of their situation. Papa will still do his royal duties when he feels well enough. But Grandpapa and the other family members will help more than usual. The most important thing is that we stay together as a family. As the children processed this information, each reacting according to their age and personality, William felt a profound mixture of sadness and determination. He was facing the fight of his life, but he was surrounded by the people who mattered most to him. The evening ended with extra-long bedtime stories and more hugs than usual, as both parents tried to provide additional comfort and reassurance to their children. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, including the public announcement that would thrust their private struggle into the global spotlight. The official statement was released at precisely 10 a.m. on a gray Thursday morning, 3 days after William's diagnosis had been confirmed. The timing had been carefully chosen to allow for maximum media coverage while giving the family time to inform extended relatives and close friends personally before the news became public. Kensington Palace is pleased to confirm that His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales has begun a course of treatment following a recent diagnosis, the statement read. The Prince remains in good spirits and is grateful for the support of his medical team. Their Royal Highnesses request privacy for their family during this time, and thank the public for their continued support. Within minutes, the news was trending worldwide on social media platforms. Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace phone lines were flooded with calls from journalists seeking additional information, while flowers and well wishes began appearing at the gates of royal residences across the country. The carefully worded statement had been designed to acknowledge the situation while protecting William's medical privacy, but it couldn't prevent the wave of speculation and concern that swept across the nation and the Commonwealth realms. News anchors interrupted regular programming to discuss the implications, while royal correspondents appeared on television to provide context and analysis. At St. Mary's Hospital in London, William was beginning his first round of treatment under the care of Dr. Sarah Henderson, one of the country's leading specialists in his condition. The private wing had been quietly prepared for his arrival, with additional security measures and privacy protocols put in place to protect him from unwanted attention. Catherine rarely left his side during those first crucial days, dividing her time between the hospital and home, where the children were trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy despite the extraordinary circumstances. The royal protection officers had been briefed to be extra vigilant about protecting the family's privacy, particularly when the children were traveling to and from school. Back at Windsor Castle, King Charles was managing the constitutional implications of his son's condition while dealing with his own emotional response to the crisis. As both a father and a monarch, he found himself caught between his desire to support William and his responsibility to ensure the stability of the institution. We need to consider a temporary adjustment to the line of duties, Charles discussed with his senior advisors during a private meeting. William's health must be our priority, but we cannot allow gaps in royal representation to affect public confidence. Princess Anne stepped forward to take on additional responsibilities. Her calendar suddenly filled with engagements that had been originally assigned to William. The Princess Royal's efficient approach to royal duties made her ideally suited to handle the increased workload, and her presence at events helped maintain continuity during the transition period. Prince Edward and Sophie also expanded their roles, particularly in relation to William's charitable patronages. The seamless way the royal family redistributed responsibilities demonstrated the strength of the institution and the deep bonds between its members. Meanwhile, the public response was overwhelming in its support and affection. Social media was filled with messages of encouragement, while traditional media largely respected the family's request for privacy. The hashtag #GetWellWilliam began trending globally, as people from around the world shared their hopes and prayers for his recovery. At the children's school, special measures were put in place to protect George, Charlotte, and Louis from excessive attention. Teachers were briefed on how to handle any questions or concerns from other pupils, while the school security arrangements were quietly enhanced to ensure the children could continue their education with minimal disruption. George, as the eldest, struggled the most with the changes in their family routine. He was old enough to understand the seriousness of his father's condition, but too young to fully process the emotions he was experiencing. Catherine arranged for additional support from the school counselor and spent extra time each evening talking through his concerns. Charlotte and Louis, younger and more adaptable, seemed to take the changes in stride, though they asked frequent questions about when Papa would be coming home and whether he would be well enough to attend their upcoming school events. The weeks that followed were marked by small victories and challenging setbacks as William progressed through his treatment. There were days when he felt strong enough to review official documents and participate in virtual meetings, and others when the side effects of his medication left him too exhausted to do anything but rest. Catherine became his fierce advocate and protector, managing communication with the royal household, while ensuring that William's energy was preserved for his recovery. She declined all public engagements during the initial treatment phase, choosing to focus entirely on her family's needs. 3 months after the initial announcement, William was well enough to make his first public appearance since beginning treatment. The carefully planned walkabout outside the hospital where he had received care was brief but emotionally powerful, as crowds gathered to show their support and admiration for his courage. Standing beside Catherine, with their children holding his hands, William addressed the small group of media representatives who had been invited to document the moment. His voice was quieter than usual, and he appeared thinner than before, but his smile was genuine as he spoke about the outpouring of support his family had received. The past few months have been challenging, but they have also shown us the incredible kindness and strength of the British people, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. Catherine and I are deeply grateful for the privacy and support we have been given during this time, and I look forward to gradually returning to my duties as my health permits. The image of the family standing together, united in the face of adversity, became one of the most powerful royal photographs in recent memory. It captured not just their resilience, but also the deep love and commitment that held them together through their darkest hours. As they walked back toward their car, William squeezed Catherine's hand and smiled down at his children. The road ahead was still uncertain, with more treatment required and a long recovery process ahead of them. But they had survived the initial crisis and emerged stronger as a family. The experience had changed them all in fundamental ways, stripping away the formal protocols of royal life to reveal the simple truth that they were, above all else, a family who loved and supported each other through both triumph and hardship. The heartbreaking news that had threatened to tear their world apart had ultimately brought them closer together, creating bonds that would sustain them through whatever challenges lay ahead.